I hate Rocky. I hate this movie.
Yeah, I actually enjoy Rocky. I think one of your big things with this movie is that let's just say it, this movie has a lot of shit in it that's just downright like misogynist.
This movie is from the 70s, so it's from a different time. There were different societal, cultural things going on, and I understand that. It doesn't make any of it okay, and I don't think that we should hold this movie up as some sort of great classic.
Specifically, there are scenes where Rocky talks to a 12-year-old girl about everyone perceiving her as a whore, which is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, and this scene is like supposed to make you feel like, oh, Rocky, he's just trying to do the right thing, and everyone is constantly like, pushing him away or whatever. Like, oh, he's giving good advice to this little girl and she doesn't listen. He doesn't give her good advice. He takes her away from her friends and then tells her that her friends are bad people and that if she keeps hanging around with them, she's going to be perceived as a whore.
He
What?
he he does take her cigarette away. He is anti-cancer. We'll have to give Rocky that. It's also got a scene where he borderline rapes his girlfriend.
This is made even more disgusting because this character Adrian, she seems to have some sort of problem with the way they portray Rocky. I'm not sure if they meant for him to just be really dumb or if he actually does have like a mental handicap or something. But the way they portray her, she definitely seems to have something wrong with her.
I think that was only during the beginning of the movie. Polly says she's a loser, and then the card shark guy's driver repeatedly calls her a retard, which is terrible on its own. But this was the '70s. People didn't not call people retards in the '70s. It was the '70s.
That's still a problem we have.
Later on in the movie, when she actually opens up, she actually seems perfectly intelligent and everything and normal. It really does seem like she was just shy. He does have the scene where Rocky basically forces her to kiss him, which was incredibly cringeworthy. I cringed so hard.
That whole sequence goes on for forever. They go on their date. The skating rink scene goes on for so long, and he doesn't shut up. Rocky, through this whole movie, he never stops talking. I just want him to shut the fuck up. After they're done skating, they go back to his apartment, and she's uncomfortable being there. She says she's uncomfortable being there multiple times, and then when she tries to leave, he physically blocks her from leaving and basically forces her to kiss him. And it's implied that they have sex.
Then what it does is has the female character fall in love with the guy who's literally forcing himself upon her.
I hate it so much.
Yeah, it has that. It also only has black characters in the movie to be antagonists.
It's not necessarily a problem that all the antagonists are black. It's the further portrayal of the characters in that uh Apollo Creed, the main villain or whatever, not really a villain, but the guy that Rocky is going to fight, he doesn't go through training. He's not trying to better himself. He's already amazing. And he's really smart. He does things by, being clever and witty. And there's this thing throughout the whole movie where like he puts on airs of being a like American icon when really he doesn't give a shit about being American. He's just trying to exploit, the American dream or whatever.
Yeah, I think symbolically it has some racism issues more than it actually does. I mean, this doesn't have anything on the borderline rape or the telling the 12-year-old girl she's acting like a whore that Rocky does. And no one really says anything bad about black people in the entire movie. They actually respect them, which is a lot better than you can say about a lot of movies. And at least the Apollo Creed is he's actually shown to be really skilled and everything.
To me, it comes across as like, this insecure white mentality of, oh, the black people are coming, the black people are coming. And really just the whole thing of like trying to twist American ideologies to suit their needs. Like at the end when he comes out dressed up as like George Washington and he does the I want you thing. And it's like, oh my God. Ugh.
I don't think it does very much bad with that, like explicitly, but I think you are right. And in general, my big problem with this movie is that it's kind of emblematic of this like '70s, '80s macho working class white man mentality of how they treat everyone around them. It's very much just really masculine to a fault. And that's my big problem with the movie is that thematically, that's just a lot of what it portrays and everything. But also, I don't think this movie really celebrates the terrible things Rocky does because almost everything it shows, except for some of that, the thematic stuff with the Apollo Creed and stuff being black and he's fighting a white guy and all that stuff. Other than that, I don't think the actual movie has much to say on these things. It actually portrays Rocky pretty flatly. And I think at a lot of times it actually is trying to show Rocky as a jackass because the movie's kind of about Rocky trying to earn respect, not just for other people respecting him, but for himself.
See, I feel kind of the opposite way. I feel like the movie is constantly trying to make you feel like Rocky is a nice guy. Like he's not he doesn't break the guy's thumbs. He tries to teach this kid how life is. He's always nice to Adrian. He's a nice guy. He deserves, respect. He deserves to, be a contender or something. Oh.
See, I think that was one of the things that disappointed me about the movie. Was that I think in a lot of cases, whether or not the director intended to, it kind of portrays him as a jackass because some movies with a lot of these problems of misogyny or racism or just having characters treat people like shit because they feel like it. A lot of times they kind of celebrate it, like, look at this character, he's getting what he wants, and no one's gonna stop him. Isn't he a badass? Then you have movies that portray the same kind of tropes in a negative light. It's like, look at this kind of person. Look at how terrible this kind of person is. But this movie kind of displays it flatly. And whether or not the director meant to, I think from a modern reading, that kind of makes Rocky look like a jackass most of the time. For example, in the ice skating scene,
Ice skating rink.
in the ice skating rink, yes, in the ice raking skint, he really just feels like, hey, he's kind of he means well. Like he pays for he talks the guy into letting them skate, but he's also inconveniencing the guy and being rude and stuff.
I think that's supposed to be. I think that scene is supposed to be charming. We watch it now and we're like, oh, this is horrible. But at the time that they made it, they didn't see it that way at all. At the time, they were like, oh, he's a nice guy. He's charming.
Okay, well, I guess there are two readings of this, and I do agree that at the time, a lot of this probably was read as being good stuff, which is what's so horrible about it. In the culture it was released in, it was a massive touchstone for everyone, and it was hugely influential. So having all of these problematic parts was actually a big deal because it kind of encouraged them and supported them in the status quo and in their growth and stuff, which is bad. It's part of the reason we have the same problems with misogyny and implicit racism that we have today, probably, is that a lot of people in the 70s internalized this without thinking about it, and they just think that it's natural to treat women this way because that's what they've seen in culture so much. That's what's problematic about that. But also, I think the way the movie portrays it, you can get a feeling that Rocky's a jackass the entire time, and I think the movie actually handles that well, and it kind of becomes a movie about this guy's not the brightest. He's just kind of not the best at what he does, and he didn't really make much of himself. And all he really wants to do is to just do what he feels is respectable. And that I actually like stuff like how he doesn't actually beat Apollo Creed at the end. All he does is go 15 rounds and say, I don't even want a rematch. And then he just calls for his girl, which I like. I like it's kind of just an everyman type thing. Like, I have issues, but all I want to do is like do what I think is respectable for me.
So the way I saw that was it was trying to say like, oh well, you black people can come in, you can try and get our jobs, you can try and be whatever, but we white men, we can hold our own. There's the one relationship that really defines this movie, weirdly, which it's this one aspect of the movie that I had never heard of before I ever saw it, and that's Rocky's relationship with Adrian's brother, Paulie.
How do you think that defines the movie?
It's like the most prevalent relationship in the movie. I think Rocky and Paulie have more scenes together than probably any other characters. And Paulie is a horrible, horrible person. Like an absolutely abusive person who
Mm-hmm.
is an alcoholic and is constantly just trying to get something from Rocky. Like at the beginning, he wants Rocky to get him a job
He wants
with
that the
the
entire way through the movie. He's still asking about that at the end.
well, he wants Rocky to get him a job with the loan shark at the beginning, and then once he's training for the fight with Apollo Creed, he like tries to get money through like promoting Rocky with the news and stuff like that. And he's just this horrible person. Like he abuses Adrian verbally, and there's a scene like there's a Christmas scene where he just comes home drunk and he threatens them with a bat and he like is breaking shit all over the house and there's this big deal about it and Adrian moves out with Rocky. And then like in the next scene they're fine. It's no big deal.
Polly is very much like portrayed as an awful person, but then no one ever does anything about it.
It's fine. It's fine. You're a drunk and you're abusive, but no, we're good. We're good. We're cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let you put your company's logo on my coat.
The movie's really confusing and it doesn't really resolve stuff like that at all. Like I don't think the writing really does enough things to make a lot of these themes clear.
This whole movie, like, there's not much to it. It's a really simple plot, which is fine. But like, there's not really much that happens in the entire movie. So all you have are like a few good scenes, like the one with the manager. But then you have most of it just this really horrible, awkward, misogynistic stuff with Adrian, and then implicit racism. So like, how can we look at this movie and be like, oh, yep, that's a classic. We need to look up to that.
Well, I think it does portray Rocky as an asshole for a lot of this. And I think what it has is actually effective in an everyman context, if not for this stupid misogyny and racism and stuff.
Maybe if it was like a technically brilliant film, if it was like just really well directed. I don't think it is. I think it's competently directed, but not like amazing in any way. It doesn't seem in any way like special. I don't see anything in it that's like, oh yeah, we need to hold this movie up.
Well, I think part of that is because you're watching in 2015 and you already are very familiar with stuff like the training montage, which is actually really well done, I think. And it actually portrays characterization and stuff really well, and gives you that rush of oh man, this is some cool shit. I think, which is amazing considering that every movie that's ever cribbed that montage has not done it well.
I don't know. It's so hard for me to see it in any sort of positive light.
Were you really expecting me to hate this as much as you?
I was expecting you to really hate it.
I think it has some scenes that actually just work really well. Like I think the final fight scene is actually pretty well done. I think that the cinematography in that arena is pretty good. Particularly the part where he comes in to look at the paintings. I think that's also a good scene. It does a lot of things that just subtly. It does some things that's kind of heavy-handed portrayal of characterization, but it has some stuff that just does subtle characterization. And I do think you can read scenes like him telling the girl that she's acting like a whore. Like everyone in that scene hates him. Like no one respects him for that. I think you can actually read that. You could read that either as well, that girl needs to listen to him, or you could read it as, man, this guy's a dick. He means well, but he's a dick. And I think that really makes it very human.
I really hate this movie. I just really hate this
I completely understand why though. I just think it does have. I think are some nuggets in there.
There are some good things, but there's nothing in the movie that redeems its negative qualities to me.
If it wasn't so purely iconic, I would say it probably doesn't need to be held up. But it's just way too iconic and purely iconic and has way too much of a touchstone.
Well, it would be nice if just we as a culture could look back on things like this and say, "Oh, yeah, that was pretty horrible."
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we do that occasionally, but not nearly as often as we should, maybe.